Hey guys, welcome to my channel where I present hopefully useful information for living in Japan. If you're new here, hello! And if you're coming back, thank you! So today's video, as is always the case, when I was writing the script, I had a butt ton of things to talk about pretty much on each topic. So I'm going to split the one topic of how to improve your Japanese into at least 3 or 4 videos. So in this series, I will be talking about how I improved and how hopefully you would also be able to improve your Japanese reading, writing, listening, and finally, speaking skills. So first up, and the topic of today's video, is how to improve your reading. We will start with talking about the different techniques and things that I have used kind of in order of increasing difficulty. So with the intro done, let's get right to the nits and grits. Flashcards. So first up on the list is flashcards. One of the first things that I did when I started learning Japanese was to put different words on flashcards, and then I put those cards up around in my room so that I would always be taking in some kind of Japanese through my eyeballs. Here I believe you can see some of the words that I had up on my wall. I filmed this when I went back to Miami to visit the fam in 2019. To be honest, I don't remember most of the words that I had taped up on the wall. It was kind of random, but I do remember very clearly that I put up the 4 cardinal directions on the walls of my room because, you know, I'm totally the type to be out in the woods with the bugs and needing to stop and ask directions on how to get to a location, and I would need them to write me a map with the 4 cardinal locations, otherwise I would be lost forever. Okay, all bad jokes aside, I think a more productive way of doing this would be to put the flashcards on the actual thing that the flashcard will be on. I hope that makes sense, but just in case it doesn't, here's a quick visual for you. So by doing this, you're kind of creating your own little Japanese bubble, and you can study vocabulary by connecting it with the actual object that you use in your daily life versus just looking up words and connecting a word to another word in your mind. So for the record, these are not the tips on how I studied for the JLPT. These are just the things that I did when I was trying to get better at the Japanese language in general. So if you would like to view my video on discussing what I did in detail to pass the JLPT N1, then please check the video up in the banner here or here. And you can also find the link in the description box down below. After watching this video, of course. Okay, so self-promotion aside, let's move on then to the next thing I would do to help my reading. More flashcards. So another thing that I used a lot, and I also did mention this in my JLPT video, were the Anki Flashcards. For those of you who have never used Anki, I believe that you could describe it as a spaced repetition digital flashcard system. So the way that it works is you can either download the decks online, which people have already made, or you can make your own deck using the downloadable software. This is kind of a side note, but for some reason on the Apple Store, the Anki app is like 3,000 yen. If you have an Android phone or an Android device though, it should be free, I believe. The app is also free to download from the site for, I believe, most Macs as well as most Windows computers and some other operating systems, so you would definitely be able to get to use it there as well. So I really like Anki because it is good for helping you memorize words. Obviously, the more words you know, the more you'll be able to read. Also, since it's a spaced memory repetition or whatever the fancy name for that kind of study method is, then you are not studying the words that you already know over and over again. When I was studying Japanese super intensely, I would use that quite a bit, and even when I was trying to teach my Japanese high school students how to study different languages, mainly English, but I recommended they use this app as well. Of course, there are other similar apps such as Duolingo, which I haven't used too much honestly, so I can't really speak for it, and there are others like Quizlet, which has like flashcards, but it's cool because you can also make different types of quizzes using the words that you upload. The quiz on here is just the first set of flashcards that I found when I looked up Nihongo on the search bar. I actually forgot that Quizlet existed until I started doing writing the script for this video. So I actually might try and use it for hopefully something fun. So be on the lookout for that sometime, hopefully before Jesus comes back. So next we move on to reading, which is the underlying topic of the whole video, but more about reading as an actual exercise versus just practicing vocabulary. So the best way that I have found to improve my reading is by reading. Yeah, I know it sounds simple, but as with a lot of things in life, the best way to be able to do the thing is to just do the thing. It can sound kind of like hard and daunting, especially when you are just starting out because you don't know a lot of words. But when you are reading to your level or even lower than your level, even if you don't know all the words that you do know come out at you, and it's like really encouraging to see how much you have come to acquire in the language. Admittedly, in the beginning, you will have more words that you don't know than those that you do know, but remember that that's just temporary, so ぜひ勉強頑張ってください. Okay, so the method that I tried to abide by when I was trying to get better at reading was the extensive reading method. This is just reading as much as possible, I think either at your level or even preferably just a bit below your level. So if we look up the definition online, then we see that it says 英語のインプットを増やすことを目的としてとにかくたくさん読むことである。日本語では多読という。So yeah, it just means to increase your input of your target language by reading a lot. It seems that the person on the blog's target language was English, but of course you can use this method for, I'm sure, most if not all languages. With the extensive reading though, you're not supposed to stop and look up all or even most of the words that you don't know. You're just supposed to keep reading and try to get the overall meaning of what's going on versus trying to understand things in super fine detail. Obviously, this has its limits, but I feel it helped me a great deal when I was really trying to advance my Japanese skills. What I would mainly use for reading was like children's book PDFs that I could find online. Admittedly, at the time I was trying to do this, there wasn't much free stuff that you could get, let's say, within legal boundaries. So let's just say that I had to do what I had to do, and now my sins are forgiven. Thank you, Jesus. But now I found this site which has free ehon or picture books that you can find online. I'll link that down below in the description box. This site looks pretty great though because you can choose books based on age and type of story, like for example like kawaii type stories or kanashii type stories. By the way, the first book that I clicked on started off with extreme levels of sadness, so while I did not finish reading it, I would personally not recommend Oba-chan to Kuroneko no Okoge. Don't do it. In looking up materials for the video, I also found another site that has some free ehon that you can read online. This one looks like it might be a bit for slightly older kids as the stories look longer and have a bit more kanji. I only did a small peek at the other ehon site though, the one with like the tragic grandma story, so I could be wrong, but this also has quite a variety of books that you can read for free, so I would recommend checking that out as well. The sites I just mentioned, I did not personally use when I was really trying to advance my Japanese skills, but the next ones I will mention now I did, and these I would absolutely 10 out of 10 recommend. So the first being this mukashibanashi site. So mukashibanashi are fairy tales, and what I really like about this site is that they have a story for every day of the year. In addition to that, they have an audio plugin that you can listen to of someone actually reading the stories. So you can choose to just listen to the story, or you can read it and listen to it at the same time. So this is really cool, not only because you get to practice the Japanese language, but you also get to learn about different Japanese stories that are really embedded in Japanese culture, such as Tanabata. By the way, the first story about the cat and the mouse, I remember reading that story when I was in university, and I still remember that story to this day. Regardless of what day of the year it is, I would definitely recommend reading that story as it is super cute. So, getting back to the topic at hand, this site has a Japanese story for each day of the year. But then they also have a story for each day of the year for fairy tales around the world. So I think that this is super useful when learning a language, especially because if it's a story like Little Red Riding Hood, which most people probably know, then you already have the story laid out in your mind. So you're not really struggling to learn the story and the words. Your brain is only really trying to make the connection of the words to the actions in the story since you already know how the story goes. If that makes any sense. I hope so. Also, this is all allegedly, so nobody go quoting me nowhere. Okay, so this site is free 99, so I would 99%, just kidding, 100% recommend that you check out that site. You can find the links to all the sites down below. Also, you should take note that this site does not have furigana over the kanji, but that's where dun dun dun, Rikaikun and or Rikaichan come in. If you don't know what this is, it's a super useful extension that I think you can use for Firefox and Chrome, but essentially once you turn on the extension, then when you hover over Japanese words, you can get the meaning of the word. I haven't used the Chrome one in a while, but when I used the Firefox one just now, they had the pitch accents on the words. I'll put that on the screen. I don't really know how to explain that, to be honest. Funnily enough, I had just been watching a video from, I think it's Matt versus Japan, who speaks Japanese really well. But just so you know, Matt, I'm watching you. But the point of that story was to say that the Firefox one, unlike the Chrome one, has the pitch accent signals on the words, so that was cool, and I wouldn't have figured that out. I wouldn't have made that realization probably had I not just seen that video right before. Next on to NHK Easy News. I used to use this site a lot. As you can see from the site, they have furigana over the text, which is honestly super amazing. The appeal of the site though is not only the fact that they have put furigana over the kanji, but also the fact that the news article itself is made easier, hence the title Easy News or Yasashii Nihongo. They also have a feature where if you hover over the word, then it'll give you the meaning. And this site, like the Mukashibanashi site, also has a plugin that allows you to listen to the audio. I don't think that the audio is actually a person though, so I'm sure some people might not be super into that. Like, you know, that Android voice just whispering in your ear. But you do have the option to at least read along while listening to the audio, which I figure the more sensory input you have with the language, the better. It also seems to have some different nouns color coded, so you can know what it is that they're talking about. So for example, orange is the name of a place. Tokyo Disneyland, of course, is also a place, but it is blue because it is the name of a company. So they make that distinction with their colors. In addition, it has the original video, so you can try and test yourself so you can see how much you can pick up from the full speed Notto so Yasashii Nihongo news clip. I actually used to work in the language lab at my university as the Japanese tutor for a year and a bit, I think, before I came to Japan. And when I was waiting for students to come by, I remember I was usually either doing homework for my Japanese classes or I was reading articles on this site and trying my hardest to keep up with the regular paced news. 8 years later, I now have my own Japanese news. One video. So that's it for today's video. There's actually a lot more stuff that I could talk about reading, but I think I'll save that for another day. This thing is already going on 20 minutes to be honest. Thanks so much for watching, and if you made it to the end of the video, then you definitely deserve a good ol' otsukaresama deshita. I hope this video was at least somewhat useful. If you like this kind of content, please remember to like, subscribe, and gently tap the notification bell icon. And as always, hope you guys have a super fantabulous day. Goodbye! You're such a cutie. I love your booty. You're such a cutie.